Hi, I'm Dr. Asha Priyanka, your public health dentist, and the topic today is epidemiology of dental caries. At first glance, it looks like a very long chapter, I agree, and we will do this video as well in part 1 and part 2. But if you understand the logic of the chapter, it actually becomes very easy to remember for the exams. So before we start, let me give you a simple framework. I want you to, whenever you see this topic, I want you to think of it in 5 stages. I want you to think of it as disease, prediction, cause, control, and monitoring. Remember these 5 words. So disease, prediction, cause, control, monitoring. This framework we will guide you or structure you through the topic. And in the first part, we'll cover 2 stages. We'll understand the disease itself, how common it is, and how we can predict its risk. Okay? And then in the next part, we'll move on to its causes and its prevention. Now, if you remember this flow, it'll become very structured in your mind, and you can easily answer this question, however long it is, whether for a theory exam, whether for your MCQs, or whether for a Viva as well. So, coming to the introduction, let's start with our basics. What is dental caries? Dental caries is defined as a microbial, dynamic, and site-specific disease of the hard tissues of teeth. What actually happens is that bacteria present in the dental plaque ferment the dietary carbohydrates and produce organic acids. Now, these acids will demineralize the enamel and the dentin. If this process continues without any intervention, the lesion will progress into the enamel, then into the dentin, and eventually into the pulp, causing pain, infection, and tooth loss. Now, one important thing to remember here is that dental caries is not a self-limiting disease. So, unlike some infections, it doesn't resolve on its own. Caries continues to progress until it's treated. Because of its high prevalence worldwide, it's also considered one of the most significant chronic diseases affecting humans, and particularly children and underserved communities, making it a major focus in preventive and public health dentistry. So, what is this epidemiology of dental caries? Now we move on to epidemiology, which is simply, it means that it's the study of distribution and determinants of a disease in the population, like we have learned earlier. Now, dental caries has a very high global prevalence. Like I said, studies show that approximately 60 to 90% of school-aged children are all affected with caries. And adults, the prevalence can reach up to 100% in a lot of the populations. However, the distribution of caries is not uniform across the world. There are some variations, and all of this depends on some basic factors like their geographical region, like their socioeconomic status, dietary patterns, their access to dental care, and the fluoride exposure. In many developed countries, caries prevalence has decreased due to widespread use of fluoridated water, use of fluoride toothpaste, and improved oral hygiene practices, so improved awareness. But in contrast, we see the same in several developing countries where they are experiencing rising or plateauing of the caries rates. Why? Mainly because of increased sugar consumption and very limited access to preventive care. Now, let's see a concept called caries risk assessment. Now, this is the next step in our framework, which is prediction. First was the disease. We've learned about that. Next is prediction. Now, what is caries risk assessment? It is a predictive tool used to estimate an individual's likelihood of developing caries in the future. So, it's a tool that tells us if a person can or will get caries or not. How does it do that? It considers many factors, like the person's past caries experiences, their salivary flow and buffering capacity, their diet, their fluoride exposure, and their practices, their oral hygiene practices, also their socio-behavioral factors. Now, based on all of these factors, patients will be categorized into low, moderate, or high-risk caries groups. This helps us clinicians design personalized preventive and treatment strategies for them. Now, there are some standard questionnaires you can use for this, like the Canberra and the AAPD risk assessment forms. We very usually use them in, or very frequently use them in clinical practice also. Now, the next aspect is dietary studies. Now, we all know that diet plays a crucial role in development of dental caries, and several classic epidemiological studies have been demonstrated for this relationship. One well-known example is the Vipeholm study in Sweden. So this study showed that frequency of sugar consumption has a stronger effect on caries more than the quantity of sugar consumed. So basically, more than how much sugar you eat, how many times you eat it is important. Another important study is the Hopewood house study in Australia, where children raised on a vegetarian diet with minimal processed sugars had significantly fewer caries. However, when their diet later changed and included the refined sugars, caries incidence increased. Similarly, in the Turku sugar study, it demonstrated that replacing sucrose with xylitol significantly reduced caries development. Now, from all these studies, what we can conclude are three very important points. One is that frequency of sugar intake is more important than its quantity. Two, sticky sugars are more cariogenic than liquid sugars. And three, dietary counseling plays a very critical role in caries prevention. This is what we spoke about in nutrition topic as well. It is not an option for us dentists to talk about dietary counseling or to give dietary counseling to our patients. It is necessary. So the knowledge we need to have is also necessary. Okay. Now comes our theories of caries etiology. To understand how caries develops, there are several theories. The most widely accepted theory is the Miller's chemoparasitic theory. It was proposed in 1890. According to this theory, oral bacteria ferment carbohydrates to produce acids, which dissolve the tooth mineral. Now, we've been talking about this again and again. And we all have an idea of, like, this is the mostly wide accepted theory, right? Now, another theory includes the proteolytic chelation theory. Now, this suggests that degradation of organic matrix contributes to mineral loss. It is less supported, but it offers a biochemical explanation for the subsurface lesions that are there. Then comes our Sucrose-specific plaque hypothesis. This highlights the role of sucrose in the formation of extracellular polysaccharides that enhance the bacterial adherence. So, if bacteria adheres more, it produces more acid, and that acid works better on the tooth surface, etc., etc., giving rise to our caries. More recently, the ecological plaque hypothesis has gained a lot of attention. Now, this theory states that when there's a change in the oral environment, which means there's a pH drop, due to many factors like their sugar intake, their shift in microbial balance towards more acidogenic or acidiuric bacteria, leading to caries. Now, let's just look at this diagram, which shows us the mechanism of dental caries in detail. Basically, it says that the dental caries is a constant battle between demineralization and remineralization that happens on the tooth surface. So let's break it down. The core idea here is that dental caries is not a sudden event. It's dynamic, it's continuous, where some minerals are lost, that's demineralization, and some minerals are gained back, that is remineralization. And when loss is more than gain, caries takes place. So first, let's see the microbial biofilm or plaque. This is the green layer on top of our tooth. This contains bacteria like the Streptococcus mutans. Now, these bacteria, they feed on dietary carbohydrates like sugar, cola, chocolate, everything, all this. And they produce acids, mainly lactic acids. So now this acid attack causes demineralization, where acids release H+ ions and they penetrate the enamel. Now, what is the result here? It's the loss of minerals. We see the calcium and phosphate ions that are lost. This causes subsurface enamel demineralization, which is our early caries. Now, important here is that caries starts below the surface before you see a cavity. Now here we've seen this mineral loss. We see these arrows going out of the tooth. This is the demineralization. So what does this mean? This means the tooth becomes weaker and eventually it will cavitate. Now, what factors affect this are one, our saliva, which is actually our natural defense. So this saliva, what it does is neutralizes the acids and because it buffers the pH and it supplies calcium and phosphate ions. It also promotes remineralization. So if saliva wins, tooth repairs itself. If not, then caries will happen. Next is fluoride. Now, fluoride gets incorporated into the enamel and forms fluorapatite. This makes enamel more acid resistant and it enhances remineralization. So think fluoride is your bodyguard of the enamel. Now, at every moment there is a balance. So demineralization and remineralization both are fighting here. In demineralization, we can see the bacteria and the sugar. In the same way, when we talk about remineralization, we can see our saliva and fluoride come to help. Now, if the acid attacks are more frequent, so if there's like a lot of snacking or poor oral hygiene, then caries will happen. And if saliva and fluoride dominate, then tooth remains healthy. Okay. So basically we need to remember that caries is not caused by sugar alone. It's caused when acid attacks exceed the tooth's ability to repair. Next, we look at two closely related concepts, that's caries activity and caries susceptibility. So caries activity basically refers to the current status of disease progression. It indicates whether lesions are actively progressing or they are arrested. Now, how do we know this? It's because if we notice any new lesions appearing over time, or if there's any white spot lesions, or there is soft denting, and there is plaque accumulation, this means that the lesion is actively demineralizing. Now, then what is caries susceptibility? It, on the other hand, refers to the likelihood developing caries in the future. It depends on the interaction of host factors, microbial factors, and the environmental influences. How can we diagnose this? We can diagnose it through some simple tests. The Cinder test, the lactobacillus count, colony count, and the salivary flow and buffer capacity. All of this will tell us caries susceptibility and caries activity going on in a person's oral cavity. Now, to help visualize this or visualize the caries risk, a model called the karyogram was developed by Vipeholm in 1997. This karyogram represents a pie chart representation of the various factors that influence the caries risk. So these include diet content and frequency, plaque amount, the mutant streptococci levels, fluoride exposure, salivary flow and buffering capacity, and the clinical experience and general health of a person. Now, each sector of the pie chart represents the contribution of these factors, and the green color in the sector represents the chance of avoiding caries, making it a useful tool for patient education and individualized prevention planning. So in this first part, we have understood three things: what dental caries is, how common it is in our populations, and how we assess the risk of developing it. In the next part, we'll move deeper into the causes and control of the disease, where we will discuss concepts like the Keys triad, the etiological factors, prevention strategies, and global oral health goals. So, what I would ask you to do is go through this first part. This gives a very important foundation. I wanted to go and take screenshots and make your own flashcards and try and give your own explanations, write it out behind the flashcard, take a screenshot of the concept or the diagram that we spoke about. Go write the explanation behind it, test yourself to see if you've understood the concept. If not, come back to the video, take another look, and master the topic, because in the next in the next part, we will go much deeper. So I will see you in part 2.